Now, we don't mean weird as in listen to music that makes your ears bleed weird, or watch this movie where you stare at a puddle while a Mongolian throat singer sings in the background weird. Though if you enjoy these things, good on you. We mean media that decides to go in a direction that is much different than the typical show or movie or song. Media that will probably influence your creative outlets like it has with us purely because it decided to do things differently.
How long does this usually take this?
Questions. We all got 'em. Where did we come from? Why are we here?
Hong Kong. But where are you going?
A good mystery is a compelling tool to keep viewers invested in the series. Each episode peels back a layer of the riddle until we are left with the naked truth. Or if you're the leftovers, you don't do this at all. You force your lead actor to wear 2 pairs of boxers instead. We'll probably make a couple quadrillion videos on leftovers later down the line, so we'll have to save all the juicy details for later. However, anyone who's seen this show knows that it's hard not to recommend this masterpiece to anyone willing to listen. Here's the rundown. 2% of the world's population just went poof on October 11th. No one knows where they went or why they went. A traditional show would answer this question, but The Leftovers is far from a traditional show. To be frank with you, the mystery is never answered, and you won't know where the 2% went. This may stop you from watching the show entirely because what else could the show possibly be about? Especially considering there's 3 seasons. That is precisely where The Leftovers differs from the usual TV show. The Leftovers chooses to focus on those left behind and how the sudden departure affected them. 2% may not sound like a lot in the grand scale humanity has spread across the globe, which is why people all still have jobs and mortgages to pay.
Hang on, I'll transfer your call.
But an event like the sudden departure still affects everyone left behind. How can you just move on from something that defies both science and religion? That's what the show chooses to focus on. The characters are shattered and so desperately want to stop feeling this way. But humans are strange, and some don't even want to stop feeling like this. They fear that they'll forget those that left them behind. With this little preview we gave you about the show, you might be wondering where the weird aspect comes into play. The answer? Literally the whole show. From dream sequences to events playing out randomly and suddenly to otherworldly experiences, this show is weird from start to end. But everything in the show has a reason to be there. You just have to start looking at things less with your brain and more with your feelings. Because even though we didn't understand most things happening on screen, we definitely had a strong emotional reaction to them. This is one of the few shows out there that doesn't actually even feel like a show, but more like we're peering into these people's lives as they work to figure everything out and just move on from the most traumatic moment in human history. There is nothing like it out there. The Leftovers is a genuine masterpiece that we would love to make a long-form video on someday. But for now, please check it out if you can.
Please!
I promise that you will not be disappointed.
The gifted. And the damned.
Another show that involves a mystery that plays out in an increasingly strange way is called Twin Peaks. If you know anything about David Lynch, then you know how strange he can be.
Peter. The horse is here.
Most people don't understand Lynch's movies. I am one of these people. Twin Peaks is no exception to the David Lynch style of being the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. Until you watch another David Lynch joint. This might turn you away from watching Twin Peaks, but heed my call for just a little longer. Twin Peaks is about the murder of a girl named Laura Palmer. That's the surface level premise of the show. However, this murder is just a piece of the insanity coming from Twin Peaks. The question of who killed Laura Palmer becomes increasingly more eerie the further into the show you get. And how they eventually figure out who the killer is done in a way that I have never seen before in a murder mystery type show. The bizarreness comes out in full force by the characters that inhabit Twin Peaks. From Andy, a kind-hearted deputy with just enough brain rot, to Major Briggs, a well-articulated father that somehow feels both detached from the other characters while also fitting right in. To Log Lady, a woman with a log that can apparently observe events without even needing to physically be there. All the characters in the show are outlandish, and that's what makes them so memorable. And no characters are as memorable as the main man himself, Special Agent Dale Cooper. Cooper is an FBI agent sent to Twin Peaks to figure out what happened to Laura Palmer. In most shows, the FBI agent would be a cold, calculated person that has seen far too much. However, Cooper is such a goofball that you can't help but love him. He's still incredibly perceptive and agile, but he is a person that genuinely cares about others.
He's perfect. Isn't that the truth? Alright.
He doesn't deny something because it sounds insane, like clues coming from his dreams about the murder. He instead uses these ridiculous moments to further the investigation. Dale is an amazing character and deserves the utmost praise. As stated before, our boy Dale is a grade A goofball. A real knucklehead, if you will. But his odd and quirky nature isn't isolated to his character alone. For a show like Twin Peaks, one that deals with a very grim and traumatic subject matter, you'd expect the show to reflect that. And while it surely can, we also get gems of scenes like this.
Now, I've got the rest of our day mapped out. Let's meet back here in 3 minutes. Harry, I really have to urinate. Oh, by the way, coffee at the Great Northern? Incredible.
I was not expecting to laugh as much as I did while watching Twin Peaks. The show is a perfect example of why creators should take things a little less serious sometimes. It makes the experience as a whole more memorable and enjoyable. While you won't receive answers for everything in the show, the real enjoyment to be had is how the characters interact with each other and this almost supernatural world they happen to be a part of. Sure, it can be over the top and straight goofy sometimes, but that is why this show is so wonderful. Just like The Leftovers, Twin Peaks stands in its own lane without any competition. If you can, please give Twin Peaks a shot. You might come to love it like we did.
Hello?
I love you.
Tall tales.
Bad luck to kill a seabird.
Normally, movies aren't a preferred form of media. There are things that a video game or a Japanese cartoon can do that a movie simply can't. This is why when I do watch a movie, I feel compelled to know as much as I can about it before I commit to watching it. I want to be sure I like it before even watching it. But this mindset sucks. Going into things blind makes a new piece of media you consume so much more of an experience. Sure, there's a 50-50 chance you'll like it or not, but that risk is negligible. We're big boys and we could take risks. And it's this change in mindset that led me to watching The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse was directed by Robert Eggers, who you may know from his work on this one, and The Northman. I've only seen a couple of this dude's movies, but I feel like he definitely has some of the strongest films in A24's catalog.
What the hell?
His use of sound, lighting, and overall mastery of directing leads to some really strange but awesome stuff in my opinion, and The Lighthouse is no exception to this. Straight up, I really enjoyed this movie, but I know a lot of people who try to watch it for the first time won't, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to tell you why you need to like it, but I'm hoping to convince you to give it a shot regardless, because even though this could be a very jarring and polarizing experience for many, it'll definitely be a memorable one. Our story begins with our two protagonists, Ephraim Winslow and Thomas Wake, arriving at the lighthouse they'll be keeping watch over for the next few weeks. We get a small tour of the rundown house that the keepers will be staying in. The entire time, the cold and desolate tone of the scene is very palpable. The reality of the isolation these characters are about to experience is slowly settling in. It's already unnerving. And then Willem Dafoe farts. Perfect cinema. I won't go any further with the plot, but let's just say our boys get up to some nautical nonsense. The performances by both Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are fantastic. The Lighthouse sports a very small cast, so every performance needs to be expertly pulled off. Say what you will about the other aspects of the movie, but put some respect on the acting chops of Robbie P and the Gas Goblin over here. You'll probably also notice how the movie's been shot too. If the black and white and unconventional aspect ratio didn't get the message across, Eggers is clearly trying to invoke some early 20th century vibes, and it works really well. It gave me the feeling that I was watching something from a far off time. This also just feeds into the movie's unique feel overall. I barely know what the hell is happening in my own life, which is cool, because The Lighthouse doesn't seem to know either. I mean, it definitely does, however the viewer is constantly fed contradicting information by the movie. We start to question the events unfolding before us, and we feel closer to the characters who are actively losing their minds on screen. Another aspect I really enjoy is all the references the Eggers hit in the story. There's allusions to cool obscure art, ancient mythology, and real life events that all come together to form an extremely cerebral but enjoyable viewing experience. Just don't watch with your parents in the room. I am not making that mistake again. That's my spiel about The Lighthouse. Take a chance and try it out. Whether you enjoy it or not isn't really that important. But I think you'll definitely agree that there's not much like it when compared to other movies. That is what makes it so unforgettable. Well, that and a couple other reasons.
Blade.
Weird media isn't just movies and TV shows. Music is probably the place to discover some eccentric stuff. With that, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite artists at the moment, Bladee. Bladee is a music artist that used to make some rather uninspired songs in the past. You know, the do drugs, I'm depressed kind of music. I really couldn't care much for this genre, which is most likely why I never really cared much for Bladee in the past. However, Bladee has really been reinventing his sound over the past few years. His most recent release, Crest, which was a collaboration album with Echo 2K, is one of the most unique albums I've ever heard. The dreamlike beats mixed with Echo 2K's androgynous vocals creates this distinctive sound I haven't heard anywhere else. It's weird, but in the best way possible. Blade's most recent release, Spider, follows this eccentric change in Blade's discography, and only adds to my enjoyment of Blade and Echo 2K's music. I've seen old fans upset that Blade seems to have basically dropped his old sound for this newer, and frankly more interesting style. To be honest, I don't understand why people would prefer his older sound. His newer style is much more interesting and captivating, especially when it comes to Blade's lyrics in recent songs. Like I said earlier, Blade used to make music about doing drugs and depression, which isn't a bad topic to discuss per se, but it's just been done to death at this point. However, Blade is discussing more engaging topics like accepting death as a fact of life, and appreciating every small detail of life. It's like Blade figured out his depression and is in his bloomer era. I personally love the more spiritual themes of Blade's new work far more than much of his older stuff. Forcing someone into the drain won't make them see the truth like you and I have. However, I do recommend you give Blade a shot. You may not like it at first like myself, but with time, you'll be singing The Flag is Raised at the top of your lungs.
Wait, hold on!
Anime is already weird. It's made for like these people. So calling an anime strange doesn't really mean much nowadays. That is, unless you're talking about something like the fever dream masterpiece that is FLCL. FLCL, or was an OVA released in 2000, created and directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki. I shudder to think about what goes on in that man's head. FLCL stands out from other anime series through the cooked-ass way it tells its story. So much happens so fast. While I do recommend that you go into FLCL with as little pre-existing knowledge as possible, I won't blame you if you need to watch like 1 to 5 explanation videos after finishing it. After watching this show and watching a ton of video essays on it, I'm still not entirely sure that I get it. While this could seem aggravating to some, this aspect is why I enjoy FLCL so much. The show is dense. The original series only has 6 episodes. This doesn't sound like all that much, but they're so packed with odd jokes, innuendos, hilarious visual comedy, and explosive animation. Not only that, but these characters talk insanely fast for some reason.
Was sitting in the gaff and I had no fucking clue. Yes, I had to do something to do.
I have no idea why, but it just adds to the frantic and fast nature of the story. So, the story follows Naota, an angsty youth stuck in a small, sleepy town. Naota's older brother moved to the States, so now his girlfriend, Mamimi, hangs around Naota because girls with pink hair have issues. Things are as boring and predictable as ever until another pink-haired girl, Haruko, appears out of nowhere and attempts vehicular manslaughter on our protagonist. If you want to know what happens after that, just watch the show. Your interpretation is as good as anyone else's. These 6 episodes feel like a fever dream, but in the greatest way possible. The animation will switch styles without warning, characters will frantically spit dialogue at one another, all the while an amazing soundtrack from The Pillows is playing in the background. We'd love to show you how good the music is firsthand, but the YouTube copyright bots will swing electric guitars at our heads. It's hard to explain here, but after seeing it for yourself, I think you'll agree that FLCL is strange in a way that most other anime just aren't. Of course, there's still tangible meanings and themes in the show. It's not just odd for the sake of being odd. There is a tangible and well-made story here, one that will leave you confused and bewildered, but wanting more nonetheless. Like the other things we talked about on this list, a dedicated FLCL video might be made in the future, so I don't want to go full schizo here to explain what I think the show is trying to say. But until then, do yourself a favor and watch FLCL. The original. The others are kinda not the original. This is one of the shows I'm so thankful for watching with no pre-existing knowledge. And if you do the same, you'll get to experience something truly bizarre and special. Evangelion is just FLCL for people with crumbs on their bed. More outlandish media has become a much bigger part of the things we like as of recently, and we're hoping that we can use this video to convince some of you to start watching and listening to the more unconventional stuff too. If anything, we hope we could convince you to take a risk and try some media that you think you wouldn't normally like. And if you don't like it, whatever. But if you do like it, then you just found your new favorite thing. If you're like us, newer shows, games, or movies haven't really felt that special or interesting. The best thing for this burnout is to take a chance and try something strange. Not everything needs to follow the same usual formula. Be more outlandish and insane sometimes. Get out there, find some weird shit, and thanks for watching.
Hey, yo, the pizza here. Oh, nigga. My ears burn.